1948. He had one horse for about a year and a half, so it's been in the family. I mean, my family's big race fans.
Sounds like us when we're gambling. Depending on how our day goes, depends
Or
on where we eat.
In Little League, you either get hot dogs when you lose or
Right,
pizza if you win.
exactly. Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, obviously you got started somewhere, Ron. Some ownership groups get lucky right away. Some have a bumpier start. Tell us a little bit about your start.
Well, I had a bumpy start in that the first horse I bought at auction never made it to the track, and I named the stable. That was a Not for Love at a Spanish Love, and I named him Mr. Amore, and I named the stable after him when I got back into it. But my first race ever was with a $25,000 claimer, American Border, and we won the race. The horse skimmed the rail, and we won, and it was just unbelievable since then. I made 2 more claims that year. I think I had 13 races, and I hit the board 9 times. I was saying, wow, this is easy. But you learn.
I want to talk about the pedigree on Fran's Fire, a homebred by Poseidon's Warrior, a $6,500 stallion. But deep in the pedigree, I see the Grand Dam is a half to OC and a half to Shackelford. So you got to go a little bit deep in the pedigree to find the true quality, but true quality it is, Ron.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm a big one. I never got into the game for breeding. I have 13 brood mares now, and I'm big on the dam side. That's really important to me. And here we are, like I say, a $6,000 stud fee, and we're at the Kentucky Derby. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, speaking of the dam side, which is what I like to cap in terms of pedigree as well, the dam for Friends Fires, by Langford, My Every Wish. Tell us a little bit about her.
Well, I bought her her second start, a $16,000 claimer. She was never able to get to the track. Had her turned out for a while, needed something to do with her. I hold on to things, whether it's horses or cars. Like I said, I didn't get into breeding. I'm up to 13 brood mares. I got 12 babies already this year, and it's fun. So I hold on to things, and we go, and right now it's working. It's paying off.
Ron, you guys really took advantage of the point system. You danced a lot of dances. You earned a lot of points along the way. Let's start with him as a 2-year-old. Obviously, after he wins the Champagne, I'm thinking one of the first thoughts across the finish line for you is Kentucky Derby, because you win one of the biggest 2-year-old races that is run. You win at Saratoga. I mean, it was freaking awesome, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, it was. That was just truly an amazing race. He came off the pace. I think he was 7 wide around the turn. And he ran down Good Magic, and so it's a pretty amazing feat. It's been great. I knew he was something special. He broke his maiden first time out at Monmouth back in June. I was actually in Italy at the time for my daughter's wedding. And when I came back, I was at the track for another race, and Jason's assistant trainer, Carlos, said, "You going up to Saratoga for the Sanford?" I said, "I don't know, I may wait for the next week because I got a couple of horses running the following week." And he goes, "You should go." I said, "Really?" He said, "You should go." I said, "Okay." And so that's when it kind of clicked a little bit that we may have something, but it wasn't until the Sanford and then the Champagne that we knew we were on to something special.
Right, and of course the Champagne at Belmont Park, my mistake. You went from that race to eventually the Jerome for the start of the 3-year-old season. Talk us through that. You got the job done again in that race.
Yeah, it was. I made the decision early on we were going to stay in New York and do that route for the prep races, and the Jerome was the first one. It was delayed for 2 weeks, due to the weather. The weather in New York was just horrible this winter. I believe we lost 10 days of training just in the first 2 weeks of January. So that was a gutty race. I mean, it was thick, it was slow, but he dug in and he gave it all. And one thing about him, he always tries.
Yeah, I was really impressed this day because it was a slow pace that he was running into. It looked like he was up against it, and he still was able to grind things out. Let's forward to the next race, the Grade 3 Withers, though. First time around 2 turns. Got second. How did you feel about that effort?
Obviously I was happy with it. I thought we could have run better. I think we had to check 3 or 4 times in that race. And, I think we learned a lot from that race. And we moved forward from there, and here we are.
All right, so Ron, let's talk about the connections. Your trainer is Jason Service. The name Service is synonymous with the Kentucky Derby, one of the fan favorites in recent years. Smarty Jones, trained by Jason's brother John. He won the Derby, he won the Preakness, and he should have won the Belmont. That's a story for another day. But let's talk about your relationship with Jason Service. Obviously, a high percentage trainer on the East Coast, and he's one of your main men.
Jason's great. We've been together, since inception. We complement each other. I'm more of a risk taker. Jason's very conservative. We got our first graded win together, our first grade 1 win together, our first Breeders' Cup together, and now our first Derby together. So it's really exciting. He's a great guy and a great trainer, and I do a lot of claiming as well, and there's really nobody better off to claim than Jason.
Yeah, his percentages speak for themselves. So you mentioned kind of changing strategy. I kind of, with Paco Lopez aboard and drawing the rail, kind of had a feeling that might be. Can you speak to a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, our goal, I believe we're going to try and get out front. I mean, I think with this field, everybody's going to be coming, especially trying to get into the turn. Having the 1, I think we're in a good position to move forward. Having Paco, I think we're set up nice.
Talk about all the people that own horses, race horses, are into the game as much as you. You see some of these ownership groups. Saul Kuhlman's involved in a lot of these partnerships. You got China Horse Club, Windstar, Mike Rapoli. A lot of these horses are owned by the same people. They're partnerships. They want to get here. You're Ron Lombardi. You bred this horse. You're Franz Fire. That just goes to show you that anybody can make it to the Kentucky Derby.
Absolutely. It's like I said, it's a dream come true. Yeah, I'm a small stable. I have 60 horses. I have 13 broodmares. I have 28 horses under the age of 2 and under. And, we're looking to strike again next year. I have 8 2-year-olds right now. So it's a lot of fun. But, yeah, we're the small guy. We're the underdog. We're the underdog from the ownership side, from the trainer side, from the jockey side. And we love it. It's great. There's a lot less pressure on me right now.
We're going to wrap this up with you, Ron. We really appreciate your time. But, you walk around this backstretch and you see Todd Pletcher and Dwayne Lucas and Bob Baffert and Bill Mott. These guys are all holding court with all these reporters around them. Again, it goes back to what I said to you initially. You are here at Churchill Downs getting ready to participate in the 144th running of the Kentucky Derby. That name, Franz Fire, will always be on that chart. Just, explain to everybody what it's like to be here in the atmosphere.
It's awesome. It's been a great experience. I mean, just being in Churchill. I was here when I was in college. I went to West Virginia, and I came down to see Affirmed in 1978, and then the following year with a spectacular bid. A little bit different. I was on the infield. Now I'm in the owner's suite, so that's going to be something special. And the hospitality here has been just fantastic, and really looking forward to it.
Very cool. Well, we thank you for your time. We wish you the best of luck. Get a good trip, get a positive run, and most importantly, enjoy the experience. Enjoy the walkover. That's going to be special.
Oh, that's going to be great, and looking to shock the world.
Hey, mind that bird, right? 50-1. Giacomo, Stranger Things have happened. So best of luck to Ron Lombardi, the owner, Amore Stable, and Franz Fire. We're going to welcome people from across the globe. Kesh from Sydney, Australia. Janine from Arkansas. Lorraine from Ontario. People from all over the world, people joining us here at Churchill Downs as well for the Dawn at the Downs breakfast. It's a jam-packed house. It's a beautiful morning. We'll be back with much more on the Kentucky Derby Workout Show right after this.
Great job. Great job.
Feel the excitement with TwinSpires.com, the official betting partner of the Kentucky Derby and Breeders' Cup. With TwinSpires.com, place legal wagers and watch live horse racing wherever you are on any device. Sign up, play, and win today. New players use promo code WIN100 on sign up to start your $100 bonus. With TwinSpires.com, you can bet the Kentucky Derby. Get the TwinSpires.com app to receive special offers and the most up-to-date information. Terms and conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Please wager responsibly.
Where the sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. It's summer, the people are gay. The corn tops ripe and the fields are all in bloom, and the bird music all the day.
Today, we share the best of Kentucky. It's our Woodford way.
We are back on the Kentucky Derby Work Show presented by TwinSpires.com. It's Thurby. Beautiful morning. Main track is fast here under the Twin Spires in Louisville, Kentucky. And we've got some social media questions coming in. Again, the Kentucky Derby Oaks exclusive training period from 7:30 to 7:45 Eastern Time. Expecting to see Mendelssohn shortly thereafter. Joe Christopher alongside Scott Shapiro. And we're going to bring in the third and fourth members of our team with this first question. And we're going to throw this one to Brandon. Brandon and James standing up by the finish line high atop Churchill. Nikki from Facebook wants to ask, who has had the fastest workout so far? And what does that mean going into the Derby, guys?
Yeah, good morning, guys, and great to be here with you, James. That would be Lone Sailor, and he worked 5 furlongs at 57 2 workouts ago. You don't see that time very often, and the last one to do that, I believe, was Hard Spun, James. And Lone Sailor did it the right way, though, and that's what most important. This is a horse that likes to work quick. This is a barn that will work their horses quick, so no worries on my end. He did it the right way. He had a couple of targets in front, and looked good doing it, guys.
All right, thanks, Brandon. We're going to hit James with a question now. And again, Mendelssohn's been the star of the show in our social media chat rooms because he's an international phenom, and we haven't even seen him yet. We hopefully will see him today. Lots of people asking the same question. We'll throw this one to James, asking why Mendelssohn is working out after the designated Oaks and Derby time. Why is he not coming out at 7:30, James?
Aidan O'Brien wanted to bring Mendelssohn out with these other horses that he shipped over for some other races, so he didn't want to bring him out in that training session from 7:30 to 7:45. He initially was going to bring him out at 9, but he agreed to bring him out immediately after the session at 7:45. So that's when we're expecting to see him, and everybody's really excited about his first appearance on track.
Again, if you are viewing via social media, please send us a question. Any question is a good question, no matter how basic or how advanced. And also, the people that are joining us at the breakfast on at the Downs, please feel free to send your questions along as well. Let's take a look at the field for the Kentucky Oaks. The Oaks will be run on Friday, field of 14 going postward. And that one, Monomoy Girl, the morning line favorite, drawing post position number 14. She is the 2-1 morning line choice over Midnight Bisou as we take a look at that field. And as far as I'm concerned, guys, I like Coach Rocks a little bit at a price. I like Rhea a little bit at a price. But I would be surprised if Monomoy Girl and or Midnight Bisou didn't run huge, most likely win. For the purposes of wagering, I'm probably going to use those two on a lot of tickets, Scott, and single Monomoy Girl on several as well.
Yeah, it is a top-heavy group with the top two looking like serious top contenders, Joe. Monomoy Girl, Midnight Bisou. If you're looking for a price horse for myself, I'm looking to Eskimo Kisses. Obviously, we'll need the right trip, but I expect Corey Lannery to, as he always does, save ground and hopefully get the pace in front of him to be a factor late.
One of my favorite bets is the Oaks Derby double. Let's take a look at some special wagers that are going to be offered this weekend at Churchill Downs, starting on Friday with race 11, the Kentucky Oaks, the Longines Kentucky Oaks. You can bet a daily double, the Oaks into the Derby. So if you're live after the Oaks, it's always fun to wait and see what those will pays are going to be based on who you're alive to in the Kentucky Derby. So again, you can bet an Oaks Derby double, one of the funnest wagers this weekend. Then on Saturday, lots of guaranteed pools, $1 million guaranteed pick 6 starting in race number 7, a $1.5 million guaranteed pick 5 starting in race number 8, and then another cool double. It's the Bourbon double. It is sponsored by Woodford Reserve, $1 million guaranteed. The Turf Classic and the Kentucky Derby are the two wagers. Let's bring in James and Brandon once again. And James, I know that all of us on the set, Scott, James, Brandon, we all like to dive into the wagering pools, and there's some great ones this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Joe. We mentioned earlier, Ole Streaming is back that run on Friday in the Ali Sheba Stakes. There's another Kentucky Derby participant from last year in Hence that's in that field. One of the top older horses, Good Samaritan, will be in there to provide a stiff challenge as well. And on Saturday, we have last year's Kentucky Oaks winner, Abel Tasman, in the Grade 1 La Troyenne. It's the first time that anybody can remember that the Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby winners came back and ran on the same weekend a year later. And, you know, there's the stakes packed programs on both Friday and Saturday, Joe.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Pat Day Mile, Scott. It's one of those races where some horses, Gravitos comes to mind, a Sporting Chance comes to mind, that really wanted to get in the Kentucky Derby. They just couldn't get enough points, but they have some star power as well. And a horse that I really liked at the beginning of the Triple Crown season was Mass from Chad Brown's barn. He had a little bit of a setback, but he's going to be back for the Pat Day Mile. And this, before all is said and done, could be one of the most exciting 3-year-olds of the year.
Yeah, very talented horse, Chad Brown. But that race in general, Joe, always intrigues me, the Pat Day Mile, the one-turn event. Horses cutting back, some sprinters stretching out. Kind of like a miniature version of the Met Mile, one of my favorite races. But, yeah, as you mentioned, you get a couple 3-year-olds that were probably hoping to get into the Derby, but didn't quite get the points to get in.
All right, we've got some more questions coming in from social media and from Dawn at the Downs. Please keep them coming in. We're going to have a little bit of time to answer maybe a few more questions than usual today. Let's send this one to Brandon. Brandon spends a lot of time on the backstretch, clocking horses in the morning. He's got a really good idea as to what a horse's routine is like. And Brandon, Sonia from Facebook wants to know, what does a typical day at Churchill Downs look like for a Kentucky Derby horse? You got a horse running in the Derby. It's early in the morning all the way up until race time. Kind of take us through the routine.
Yeah, and it really depends on what day their race is. They're going to go ahead and back up maybe a week from the race and have a workout. After they have the workout, they're going to come and maybe just walk the shed row the next day, and then they're going to start back to the track. They're going to go ahead and start with some jogging, some gallops, and then go ahead and get more serious into those gallops. Now, once they get back to the barn, they may get a bath, they cool off a little bit, and get a little bite to eat, and then just kind of hang out the rest of the day. You know, the vets may come by, the blacksmith, the owners, and then kind of just chill out until race day, guys.
Yeah, and when race day comes around, obviously it's a little bit of a circus here on the backstretch. And what most of the owners really look forward to, the trainers, everybody involved, is that walkover, Scott. They get to walk the horses over from the backstretch up into the paddock. It's pomp and circumstance. My old Kentucky home plays as the jockeys that come out onto the racetrack with their respective mount, and it's just the pomp and circumstance like no other day in horse racing. All right, let's ask James this question. I looked at the forecast this morning. Yes, there's a good chance of rain for Oaks Day. There's even a little bit of a chance of rain for Kentucky Derby Day. You have to maybe, James, adjust your handicapping a little bit. And Amy from Dawn at the Downs is asking, in case of rain on Derby Day, which horse has an advantage on a sloppy track?
That's a good question, Joe. I mean, we're really I'm not expecting the track to be wet on Kentucky Derby Day, and really there's not a lot of the horses have experience over a wet track. My selection, though, in the Oaks, Eskimo Kisses did post an 11-length win on a wet track, so if it is wet on Kentucky Oaks Day, I'm going to be sitting pretty, I hope, with Eskimo Kisses at 15-1 on the morning lawn, Joe.
Yeah, and I think as far as the Kentucky Derby goes, Scott, maybe you can add a quick point to this. My boy Jack looked tremendous on a sloppy track in the Southwest with an absolute incredible turn of foot. So if it is sloppy on Derby Day, and we're all hoping that it's not, my boy Jack moves way up my list.
Yeah, he ran huge in Arkansas over the slop. I know Keith DeSorma mentioned he wants a fast track, so there's no excuses when he wins. But he obviously is a known commodity in the slop. So that'll help. It'll also hurt his price. I expect him to be at half the price if it's sloppy.
Well, we know that you can't all make it to the Kentucky Derby live. And, of course, a lot of you are watching at home. So we want you to be able to take advantage of everything there is to take advantage of with the KentuckyDerbyParty.com. If you're planning on watching the Kentucky Derby from home, visit KentuckyDerby.com. You can get information on where to watch, betting tips, recipes, and a chance to win a trip to next year's Kentucky Derby. You can be with us here live in Louisville. Again, for more party information, visit KentuckyDerbyParty.com. We'll be right back.
Feel the excitement with TwinSpires.com, the official betting partner of the Kentucky Derby and Breeders' Cup. With TwinSpires.com, place legal wagers and watch live horse racing wherever you are on any device. Sign up, play, and win today. New players use promo code WIN100 on sign up to start your $100 bonus. With TwinSpires.com, you can bet the Kentucky Derby. Get the TwinSpires.com app to receive special offers and the most up-to-date information. Terms and conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Please wager responsibly.
Where the sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. It's summer, the people are gay. The corn tops ripe and the fields are all in bloom, and the birds music all the day.
Today, we share the best of Kentucky. It's our Woodford way.
A very comfortable morning here on Thurby in Louisville. Main track is fast for training, and temperatures already in the low 70s, supposedly going to get into the mid-80s here today. So looking at a fast track for racing as well. We do race here at Churchill today with a first post on Thurby of 12:45. Hopefully, if you're in the area, you can join us. Got some more questions coming in from social media. Again, the training session will begin at 7:30 Eastern Daylight Time. We'll get to those questions in just a moment or two. I want to ask the panel what their thoughts are and what to expect today. Let's start with Scott, and then we'll send it back upstairs. Scott, we're probably going to see virtually everybody today. Brandon mentioned this earlier. This is final preparations, just a day or two out from the Oaks and the Derby. I'm looking forward to seeing all of them.
Yeah, I really am. We mentioned Mendelssohn and, of course, looking at Justify, but just getting a last look at these horses that we're going to, put our hearts and souls into as well as our wallets. So looking forward to just seeing everybody, the Pletchers, Chad Brown's Good Magic, just a number of great horses to take a look at today, Joe.
Let's send it up to the fourth floor and James and Brandon. And James, yesterday you were in the paddock for a bunch of the schoolers, including Justify, and I'll tell you what, he looks as good as advertised to me.
He really does, Joe. I mean, when he comes walking out of the stall, I mean, he keeps going and going and going. He's just a tremendous animal, real athletic. His coat is bright. And, well, these horses have got all the work in. They're going to be fit. It's just a matter of keeping them in place, Brandon. We're watching them today on the track. We're just looking to make sure that they're happy and feeling good and no negative signs, that they're almost ready to go for the race, Brandon.
Yeah, we're just looking for them to pick things up a little bit in here, too. And obviously, the California contenders have had a couple of days to stretch their legs a little bit. Let's look for them to pick it up a little bit. The race is 2 days away, guys. We need to see these horses picking things up and getting these serious gallops in. You saw Hofberg yesterday. You saw Justify. Bolt d'Oro got a little more serious yesterday. So I want to see these top contenders especially start to pick things up today.
Well, Oliver from Facebook, and we're going to get to this a little bit later on. We will answer some questions during the course of the next half hour or so. Oliver says, we've been listening to you guys talk for weeks now, and you haven't given us any picks. Well, Oliver, we wanted to see the post positions. We want to see these horses train. But I will tell you a little bit later on in the program, everyone on our panel, myself, Scott, James, and Brandon, we're all going to give you our top picks for the race and our best long shot as well. So that's going to come up a little bit later on in the show. Let's take some more social media questions here. And I've got Pam on Facebook. I'm going to throw this one to James because he's probably the best historian of the four of us. And we've got Always Dreaming running back. We've got Abel Tasman running back. And Pam wants to know, is it common to see horses from past Oaks and Derbies run during Derby week the year after they've won those respective races? I think this is a treat, James.
Yeah, no, it's not common to see that, Pam. The last Kentucky Derby winner that ran back the following year on Derby weekend was Go for Gin back in 1994. So it's pretty uncommon. Typically, Brandon, Kentucky Derby winners will be retired at the end of the season. So it's a real pleasure to always dream to stay in training as a 4-year-old. Fillies tend to race longer. They can only have one full year. There's not as much of stud or broodmare value as there is for stallions. But yeah, it just adds to the excitement of what is going to be a great Kentucky Derby this year.
I'd like to follow up with you here, James, because you nailed that one on the historical side, coming up with Go for Gin. We had Go for Gin's winning jockey, Chris McCarron, on with us yesterday. Another historical question for you, James. Has the outside post ever done well in the Kentucky Derby? So much was made of the post position draw, and that's what Anthony from Facebook wants to know.
Oh, yeah, the outside post has done well. Of course, the greatest example was Big Brown. He wound up breaking from post 20, went wide on both turns, didn't matter. He basically just crushed them that day. We've seen others. I'll have another Drew post 19. That was a concern for bettors, but he went off at 15-1 after winning the Santa Anita Derby and ran down Bodemeister. So, to me, an outside post is more of a benefit than an inside draw, unless you're just a dedicated closer. If you're a dedicated closer, being inside doesn't matter because you're going to take back, Joe.
As you can see, the horses are starting to advance towards the racetrack for the designated Oaks and Derby training time, which begins at 7:30 Eastern time, and a lot of buzz here on the backstretch. Just random people that know people that got a chance to come back here. Lots of photographers, as you can see. We're going to see these horses come out onto the racetrack, and it looks like we've got Kelly Schumer there, one of 3 horses that Brad Cox will start in the Kentucky Oaks, in addition to Sassy Sienna and Monomoy Girl, the favorite for the Oaks. Brad Cox looking for his first Kentucky Oaks win. Scott, we're going to sneak a question into you real quick. It has to do with the post positions. Somebody is a Noble Indy fan in the chat chat room here. It's Lisa on Facebook. What do you think about his post position?
Yeah, obviously being 14 or 15 might have been a little better, but I'm not too concerned with the outside draw. Like James mentioned, horses with that kind of running style specifically have had success. He mentioned I'll have another. I thought of American Pharaoh even, who was far outside with that stalking trip. I like Noble Indy's chances, and I'm not too concerned with the outside draw, Joe.
Yeah, the outside, there's such a long run into the first turn. I mean, if you've got 7 or 8 speed horses or pressing types, and we do have a few pressing types in this race, you might get stacked a little wide, but jockeys have a long time to figure out if they're going to try to go forward or take back a little bit and try to run in that second flight. So I would rather be outside than inside. Again, Vino Rosso's a horse. A little bit concerned with the outside post for him because he's kind of a stalker, and Johnny V is going to need to find position into that first turn. And again, once the gate opens, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to get sandwiched. You don't know who's going to run into early traffic trouble. So it's pretty much of a dice roll once that starting gate opens. If you bet on a horse, you own a horse, you train a horse, you're just looking for a clean run into the first turn and let fate take over from there. Again, designated training hours, 7:30 to 7:45. We're long awaiting the appearance of Mendelssohn, and we're going to have to wait a little longer because he's not supposed to come out until 7:45 in the morning. That's what we're hoping for, at least, with his Ballydoyle counterparts. Hopefully he will be wearing his yellow Kentucky Derby saddle towel so we can identify him. We'll be looking forward to the appearance of Mendelssohn a little bit later on. Right now we've got Bolt Doro, though. We had a chance to talk to Mick Ruiz earlier this week about Bolt Doro and his chances. I'm going to send this up to Brandon. There have been people on social media saying that Bolt Doro looks great. There have been social media comments saying that Bolt Doro hasn't been looking that great. I can tend to land in the middle. I don't think he's looked phenomenal at all, but your opinion is better than mine, Brandon.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier in the week, giving these horses a chance when they come over from California, from different areas, to kind of get loosened up and get warmed up. You know, maybe a little stiff coming out the first day, but he did a little more yesterday, especially the second time around, and stretching those legs out a little more. I like to see that, and I want to see a little more, just like we talked about earlier.
There you see Bolt Doro. Scott, you just moved to Louisville from California, but you follow the California racing intimately. Your thoughts on Bolt Doro? You weren't here for the Mick Ruiz interview, but how he's been campaigned from his 2-year-old to his 3-year-old season, the company he's kept, your overall impression of the West Coast and the quality of the preps leading up to the Derby.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you had Justify out there, Bolt Doro, and then Mackenzie was a big name that is not that was not going to make it to the Derby due to health concerns. Bolt Doro is a horse that obviously a good looking animal. He was the early favorite going as a 2-year-old, and then was the big favorite going into the Breeders' Cup juvenile wide trip. I'm a little concerned with whether he can move forward off of those first 2 efforts of the year after chasing Justify. A little concerned that may have taken the heart out of him a little bit, and I'm not sure that he's really moved forward as a 3-year-old from his 2-year-old campaign, which is also a concern.
Yeah, I mean, if you love the Santa Anita Derby and you love Justify, I can see a lot of people just saying, you know what, it's going to be Justify over Bolt Doro again, because the speed figures certainly say that might be the case. And there's a very good look at Bolt Doro, who will be ridden by Victor Espinoza, a 3-time Kentucky Derby winning jockey. He won it with War Emblem, he won it with California Chrome, and he won the Triple Crown with American Pharaoh. And there's Bolt Doro on his toes. James, what do you think of Bolt Doro and how he looks as he comes out onto the racetrack here? Like Brandon mentioned, we want to see him do something a little bit more serious today, maybe a little bit stronger gallop, have a better idea how he's going into the race.
Yeah, I mean, he looks good right now, Joe. He's got his neck bowed. He's feeling good. We'll see what he does on the track, but I'm a little bit as well as you guys. I got a little bit of a concern whether he's going to deliver an optimal performance off those 2 prep races. Definitely has a lot of talent, and like Scott mentioned, and to me, he hasn't run back to his races at 2, and I'm just a little bit worried that he'll be better later this year than on Saturday.
Well, the horse that beat him in the Santa Anita Derby, he's got the Apollo curse against him. He will face more horses on Saturday than he's faced in his entire career, and we're talking about Justify, the morning line favorite for the Kentucky Derby. Bob Baffert has won 4 Kentucky Derbies, and Mike Smith fairly well mounted this weekend with a Midnight Bisou in the Oaks and Justify in the Kentucky Derby. Brandon, your thoughts on Justify?
Looks great out here, and yeah, if you saw James' video he posted on social media yesterday, I mean, he looks like an aircraft carrier when he's walking in the paddock, and something about those chestnuts in the sun, I mean, they just shine, and he looked fantastic. Physically, you can't knock him. I mean, you heard you heard Elliot Walden say that Bob Baffert told him he's the best looking horse that he's ever trained, so looks great in the flesh. I have a feeling he's going to continue to look that way, and they're going to have to come running to catch him.
Todd Pletcher's got 4 horses in the Kentucky Derby. One of them is Magna Moon. As we continue with the Apollo Curse theme, what the Apollo Curse is, for those of you that don't know, a couple weeks into us talking about it, in 1882, a horse by the name of Apollo won the Kentucky Derby. He had never started at age 2, and since then, no horse that didn't start at age 2 has won the Derby. I believe it's like 60 horses that have tried, the likes of Curlin, Bodemeister, forward in that list. And here's Magna Moon, and I believe maybe Sassy Sienna next to him. Magna Moon's the horse we want to spotlight here. Magna Moon is a beast. And there he goes. He's going to break off into a little bit of a jog here. Brandon, I want to go back to you. This is one of the more physically imposing horses we've seen the last couple of weeks here.
Yeah, carries great flesh out here. Lots of power from behind, and you could all week he's been very energetic in his gallops, which shows me that they're going to look to show maybe more speed than they did in those Oaklawn Park races. We talked about the paces were very slow in there. Don't be surprised if they let this horse run. We saw the 47 and 1 breezing drill earlier that looked a lot faster than it appeared on the watch, and just really doing well out there and continues to flourish.
Scott, Magna Moon's a tough horse for me. I had him ranked second on my Kentucky Derby top 10 list. I've really liked him all the way through, but others have kind of impressed me a little bit more in their training than him. I mean, he's trained well, don't get me wrong. They've all trained well. I'm a little bit concerned with his penchant for getting out in races. You can't make too many mistakes in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, we had Nick Bush on last week, but he still seemed to be learning to me in Arkansas, but Nick seemed confident with his mental state coming into this race. Obviously, like you said, Joe, great-looking horse. I think it helps him to have drawn outside instead of inside. Big horse. Obviously, no one wants to get caught in traffic, but the bigger you are, the more problematic it could be, and he's still learning. I'm having a hard time with him, too.
Poetry in Motion, Justify. He's opening up his stride a little bit. Let's send it back up to James.
Yeah, definitely. Like you guys said, he's a great mover. All 4 of the Todd Pletcher horses, Magna Moon, Audible, Vino Rosso, and Noble Indy have made a great impression on the track, Joe. I have liked what I've seen from Audible. He ran 2 fast races in Florida, winning the Florida Derby and the Holy Bull, and I think, he's trained well here. I love his gallop outs in the morning, and that's one thing we're watching, not only them coming by us on the front side, but they continue to gallop out in the first turn and in the back stretch, and it's all part of the process getting ready, Joe.
Yeah, Brandon, talk about Justify. He seems pretty energetic out here this morning.
Yeah, this is him the last couple of days as well. He's, especially when he gets around the turn, he starts to pick it up a little bit. And we're getting a little bit of wind up here, so, these horses get a little bit of wind in their face. They get a little excited as well. So, if you see a horse throw his head up every now and then, just a nice breeze up here. And it's a very, you talked about it, 72 degrees, but it's not that humid. The horses are loving this weather, and you're going to see a lot of horses feeling good out here, Joe.
All right, let's see who else we can find on the track. We've gotten a good look at Justify. We've gotten a good look at Magna Moon. We've got Good Magic. This is a horse that has been here at Churchill Downs. He got here early for Chad Brown. He's made some good impressions, I think, in his training. Scott, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on Good Magic. Obviously, the progression from 2 to 3, a little slow, a little bit disappointing in his first race of the year, but he won the Bluegrass and could take another step forward.
Yeah, remember, he came into that Breeders' Cup third race off the layoff and ran a career best. Chad Brown clearly had the goal on winning the Kentucky Derby this year. This is his third start of the form cycle. Whether he's fast enough remains to be seen, but I'm expecting his best effort on Saturday.
James, Brandon, your thoughts about Good Magic before you got a chance to see him over the course of the training the last week or 10 days, and your thoughts on him now?
I was a little skeptical off that Bluegrass. It didn't come back real fast, Joe, but he's moved up in my mind just based on his appearance here. He looks great. It looks like he's sitting on a peak effort for Chad Brown. Brandon?
Yeah, the best thing for me is the energy level. We've seen this energy from him, and it's been consistent throughout the whole week. I think of him as a very workmanlike horse, and you can see he just loves what he's doing out there, and he's moved up in my opinion too.
Yeah, he's not real flashy in his races, but he's just professional, and I think, you can bank on him running a good race. You could bank on almost all of these running a good race. It all depends on where they fall in line talent-wise, and obviously in a 20-horse field, getting a good trip is imperative to having a legitimate chance to win. So, you can't control the gate break. There's only so many things you can control during the race, but once they sort themselves out on the backstretch, it's positioning, it's pace, it's jockeys, and it's what the horse is capable of doing in that final quarter of a mile with 170,000 people here under the Twin Spires, and Good Magic has impressed me in his training this week as well. And if he pays $22 on Kentucky Derby Day, you're going to have a lot of people who didn't bet him shaking their heads. Who else we got out there? We're going to go back to Bolt. He has begun to pick it up a little bit. And what are you guys seeing from Bolt de Oro? Anything different than the last couple of days, Brandon?
He's got the ears up, and they're kind of flopping back and forth like he's just kind of waiting on cue. He's very relaxed out there, and you just like to see that they're doing a little more than they did the previous day. And we talked about it just coming out and doing a little jog the first time they got here. He's doing much more today, so I like to see that. And it looks like he's carrying good weight, so for me, there's no real knocks on Bolt right now.
All right, that's a good look at Bolt de Oro. Got a chance to talk to Mick Ruiz, his first Kentucky Derby. He's the owner. He's the trainer. Victor Espinosa, as I mentioned, 3-time Kentucky Derby winning jockey. Bolt de Oro was the big horse last year as a 2-year-old entering the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Wound up finishing 3rd after a slow gate break and a wide trip behind Good Magic. Solomini was 2nd in that race. Solomini, of course, also in the Kentucky Derby this year. Bolt de Oro has a fan club. If you've been following on social media, The Bolt Show, a Spendthrift Farm, he will stand at stud at the conclusion of his career. So good look there at Bolt de Oro. Lots of horses on the track. Who we got next here? Continue to see Bolt de Oro jog around the racetrack here this morning. Thurby, Churchill Downs. Let's take a look at Audible. This is a horse a lot of people are waiting to see. I know prominent in Ed DeRosa's selections. Prominent for you too as well, Scott.
Yeah, what I like about Audible, Joe, is his versatility. He shows that he can sit just a couple lengths off the pace if it's a soft pace. But if they go at it fast like they did in the Florida Derby, he showed that he can relax towards the back and make a big run. He has that kind of run around the far turn that a lot of winners have had in the past. I really think he's sitting on a big one.
Yeah, Audible attacks the ground in his races. A lot of knocks on him. In regards, I'm going to send this to Brandon. In regards to his morning training, Brandon, you didn't get a chance to really see him in person until he arrived here at Churchill Downs. People talking about, he's lazy in the morning, he's much better in the afternoon. Your thoughts on what you've seen in the mornings from Audible?
Yeah, I thought he was very workmanlike again, Joe, to the wire with his workmate in the final prep for this, but really impressed me on the gallop out. He got better on the gallop out. For me, he's a horse that has a lot of power behind. Obviously justifies a great-looking horse, but Audible's, if you watch his races, if you were here for that workout or saw it on the video, lots of power from behind, and I think he's going to have a strong late kick turn for home.
Yeah, he just attacks the ground, this horse does, and both of those recent wins in Florida were visually impressive. A lot of people questioning whether or not he can get 1.25 miles. A lot of people that like to look at pedigrees not questioning this guy's chances to get 1.25 miles. James Vino Rosso, a horse that appears to be peaking at the right time. And Johnny V had a couple of different choices. Johnny Velasquez is the winning rider aboard Always Dreaming last year. He's won 2 derbies. He could have ridden Noble Indy. He could have ridden Audible, but he picks Vino Rosso.
Yeah, but Javier Castellano had been Audible's regular rider. On Florida Derby Day, he was in Dubai, and John V. rode Audible to the Florida Derby. But he has been up on every career start of Vino Rosso, so it was no surprise to see him opt for Vino and Javier Castellano, who really, that was the key jockey choice, because Castellano had been the rider of Bolt de Oro and Audible, and he chose Audible over Bolt de Oro. So I think I think it's a sign of confidence, definitely. The pusher has good riders for all 4 of his horses, and you mentioned Vino Rosso's breeding. He's by Curlin, who's also the sire of Good Magic, and Curlin has a Preakness winner, a Belmont Stakes winner, and it would be no surprise to see him sire a Kentucky Derby winner.
This is kind of the buzz horse. This is the horse that has a chance to take a massive step forward in the Kentucky Derby. He's only run 3 times, trained by Hall of Famer Bill Mott, who does not force horses into spots. He put this horse in the Florida Derby. We knew that this horse probably deserved to be there based on the connections, and Hoffberg proved Belmont right by running second behind Audible. I'm going to send this back to Brandon. This horse has been impressive in the mornings.
Yeah, he's done everything right since he's gotten here. The drill was really good that he had. His final workout for this was really good, especially on the gallop out, and we talked about it. Belmont doesn't really do a ton on gallop out, and this horse galloped out strong all the way to the 3/4 pole. He has that bounce kind of to him that we like to see, and for me too, the extension that he gets behind when you see him hit those back hind ends on the ground, and he's really getting a good push, and the ears are up. He just looks like he's really having a good time out there.
Hoffberg is by Tappet, and Tappet, one of the premier sires, if not the sire that everybody talks about as the #1 sire in North America. Ridden by Irad Ortiz, who won the Belmont Stakes in 2016 with Creator. And this is a horse that is a wise guy horse for sure, and a lot of people's live long shot for the Kentucky Derby. Speaking of long shots, when I saw Instilled Regard win the Lecomte Stakes at Fairgrounds, I'm like, man, this horse is right near the top of my list. Disappointing in his follow-up race in the Risen Star. Went back to California, ran in the Santa Anita Derby, Scott, and was well beaten by Justify and Bolt Doro.
Yeah, like you, I was high on Instilled Regard after his Cash Call Los Alamitos futurity effort when he ran to the wire with Solomini and McKenzie. Equally impressive in the believe the Lecomte at the fairgrounds. Hasn't moved forward, has actually taken a step backwards, was beaten handily by Justify and Bolt Oro. Hard to make a case, but perhaps he can sit off the pace and make one run and pick up some pieces.
Yeah, and James, you visited me a couple of times at the fairgrounds this winter, got to see some of those horses in those prep races, the Lecomte, the Risen Star, and eventually the Louisiana Derby. And Instilled Regard cost $1 million. I mean, he's got the pedigree to go long, and he's got a great trainer in Jerry Hollendorfer. You know, I don't think he can win the Kentucky Derby, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ran fourth. He'll probably be even third on some of my trifecta tickets.
Yeah, I mean, you reference it, $1 million baby, and he's by Arch, so he has all the pedigree. Arch was sire, Breeders' Cup Classic winner, Blame. The one thing with Instilled Regard is, though, he has taken a step back, like you guys referenced. That's a bad sign in my eyes coming into the Kentucky Derby. I can maybe make an excuse for the next to last or the last prep, but back-to-back races where you underachieve, that's a real negative for me.
In 2015, Zayat Stables won the Triple Crown with American Pharaoh. We're not going to confuse Salamini with him, Scott, but this is a horse that's been consistent throughout the preps. He was a good 2-year-old. He's been a decent 3-year-old. He hasn't wowed us in any of his performances. And, you know, the kind of horse that you would consider in the gimmicks, do you give him any kind of a shot to make an impact?
He's not a horse that I've ever been high on. The inability to switch leads and whatnot has concerned me. But the way they're going to run in this race, it sounds like they're going to take him to the back and try to make one run. That's always dangerous, especially if they go quick early to pick up the pieces.
Let's take a look at Midnight Bisou along with Monomoy Girl. She's going to be vying for favoritism in the Lawn Jeans Kentucky Oaks. Hard to believe that it's tomorrow. Let's send it back to Brandon. What do you see at Midnight Bisou, Brandon?
Guys, we're getting a little blowout here down the lane, and this was scheduled here. Just nice hold to the wire. Got a quarter in 26 and 4 there. Just a real nice blowout to stretch the legs. This is typical of the barn. They talked about doing this, so we got to see Midnight Bisou move a little bit and stretch the legs, guys.
And Brandon, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned old school with Midnight Bisou. Trainers don't blow out horses anymore. They used to always blow them out, like in the days leading up to the race. Can you explain perhaps why the trainer will do this 2 days out or 1 day out?
Yeah, everybody's a little different, but what they want to do is just open the lungs a little bit, get them used to the surface too at full speed. So it's one of those things where looked good down the lane and the ears were up, and they just do it to open up the lungs a little bit and tell the horse, hey, you're going to run in 2 days, so let's get serious.
Okay, guys, Mendelssohn's the rock star that everybody's been waiting to see. And there he is. He's coming out as planned, 7:45, actually 7:47. He is wearing his Kentucky Derby saddle towel. This is a horse that came over from Europe. He arrived earlier this week. He was in quarantine for 2 days. And we've been talking about him, but we haven't seen him. Let's give you a little bit of background on Mendelssohn. He's trained by Aidan O'Brien, who's 0 for 5 in the Derby, but he won 28 Group 1 or Grade 1 races just last year. Ryan Moore, European jockey, Longines World's Best Jockey in 2014, and thought of as one of the best jockeys in the world for several years now. He hasn't won a Kentucky Derby. He's 0 for 1, but he is fascinated, and that's in his own words, by this race. He could have ridden Saxon Warrior in the 2000 Guineas and Newmarket instead, but he came here. He's going to come here to ride the Kentucky Derby. UAE Derby, he won it by 18.5 lengths. But that race has not been productive in the Kentucky Derby. He is a $3 million purchase as an American yearling, the highest priced one, Keeneland September. He's a half to Beholder, who earned $6 million in her career, a half to Into Mischief, who's one of the best sires in the country right now. I could go on and on and on and on and on about Mendelssohn, who's sired by Scat Daddy, who is no longer with us, but he's very well represented in this year's Kentucky Derby. And, you know, this horse has already traveled well. James, you and I have been on this horse for a long time, so I'm going to let you speak about Mendelssohn and why you like him. Obviously, to me, he's done nothing wrong, and he has even more upside than I can even explain at this point.
Yeah, very classy 2-year-old Joe on turf. He ran second in a major Group 1 in England, and then he came to America and won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf at Del Mar last fall. A very key race, a really tough field. Came back this year, he ran on a synthetic track in his first prep, and then he switched to dirt. And it was no surprise to see him take to dirt because he's a half-brother to Beholder, one of the most legendary race mares of our time, and a half-brother to Into Mischief, a Grade 1 winner on dirt and a top-like sire in America. So in my estimation, I think he's better on dirt than turf. I think he could that race was a very encouraging sign, and I think he has more to offer possibly on Saturday.
Brandon, what are your initial thoughts getting your eyes on Mendelssohn in the flesh for the first time?
Yeah, the first thing I want to look at when they come out and visit the track is their behavior, and right now he's very well behaved. You can see he's in the company of his other stablemates from Europe, so feels comfortable there. Great plan. They usually do come out together. You can see him just getting a little worked up there by the fans, but overall very well behaved. You can see the neck's bowed the whole time. The ears have been up. He's kind of just taking everything in here. You can see him swishing the tail a little bit. He's having a good time, and I think he's glad to be able to get out of quarantine and stretch his legs a little bit.
If the camera was on me right now, I'm just smiling because this is a really cool horse. I mean, you've got the potential for some legendary horses in this year's Kentucky Derby with the likes of Justify, Audible, Mendelssohn. Man, he looks great to me. You know, this horse has been in quarantine for a couple days, Scott. You know, he traveled over here. But I think a big thing for me is the fact that he's done this already. He went to Del Mar. He won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Then he went to Dubai. And not only did he win the UAE Derby, he did it by 18.5 lengths over a pretty decent field. He's proven a lot already, but he's got more to prove on Saturday.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he's done it before, which is key, Joe. He shipped into Del Mar to win in the Breeders' Cup. His trainer, obviously very capable of shipping all over the world and winning arguably the world's best trainer. I'm interested to see what kind of trip he gets. Obviously, it'll be a little bit different than he did in Dubai when he was sent to lead aggressively by Ryan Moore, who took advantage of a speed bias. Not that that has anything to do with an 18.5 length lead, but it certainly didn't hurt. It'll be interesting to see how he can relax and come from just off the pace, in my estimation.
James, tell us a little bit more about the people that own Mendelssohn, a very interesting group of individuals, to say the least.
Yeah, it's owned by Coolmore, Real Power. They're based in Ireland. There's three principal partners, John Magnier, Derek Smith, and Michael Tabor. Michael Tabor, former bookmaker, renowned bettor, who's one of the wealthiest citizens in England. And, you know, they're not opposed to making a wager, Joe, and betting on their horses. They like to throw down when they think they're going to win. They bet their horses in America and Australia and all throughout Europe. And I won't be surprised to see Mendelssohn receive a lot of support from people associated with his connections.
Well, Tabor won the Kentucky Derby. He's won for 16 in various partnerships, but he won the Derby in 1995, James, with Thunder Gulch. You think they cashed a ticket or two?
Yeah.
Guys, I'm sure they did, and you know, James was talking about Thunder Gulch and them cashing tickets on him.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's the way the story goes, Joe. They went back to the hotel room, and they had bundles of cash when Thunder Gulch won at 25-1.
Swimming in the money. Well, Mendelssohn's not going to be 21 to 1 or 25 to 1. Obviously, he's second choice in the morning line at odds of 5 to 1. And Brandon, talk a little bit more about him coming out in company with Deauville and some of the others coming over for Aidan O'Brien. They train a little bit differently overseas. In fact, they train a lot differently overseas because the vast majority of the races there are run on turf. But they buy Mendelssohn for $3 million. He's proven on turf, but he certainly has a dirt pedigree, and that's why he's here for the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, and I think when they bought this horse for $3 million, this was the race they had in mind. Obviously, they are based overseas. They do a lot of turf racing. He's got a versatile pedigree, so why not go ahead? Let's get him started on the turf. He won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile on the turf. But when they switched him over, James talked about it earlier, he exploded.
Yeah,
and there was no surprise because of the pedigree, James.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, the thing about that trip in the UAE Derby, he showed speed. I mean, that track had been playing favorably to front runners, but he's completely versatile, Joe. He doesn't want to – the real advantage in being in post 14 is to avoid kickback, to get out there in the clear. And, you know, I thought he's really well drawn for that trip. He's definitely going to be forward, but he might be third or fourth early, but looking to get a perfect trip and not be behind horses.
He's won on turf. He's won on synthetic at Dundalk. He's won on dirt in Dubai. He'd probably run out in the parking lot if you asked him to. That's Mendelssohn right there. And Brandon, is he getting a little hot?
It looks like he's got a little bit of neck sweat going on, but that's not uncommon for them when they come over. You can see it looks like maybe a couple of the other ones as well. And just his first visit to the track, it's okay to get a little sweat going, not a big deal. And we don't know this horse all the way either, guys. This could be just something that's normal for him. For instance, like Free Drop Billy came out. I know that's kind of a normal thing for him. He was a little bit wet around the neck too. So nothing for me is, if you see him getting worked up more than anything, I'm not really too bothered by this.
Yeah, that's slightly – I want to get James's take on this. It's slightly concerning for me, and I agree 100% with what Brandon said. And, you know, we don't have a work show tomorrow, obviously, but I definitely want to see how he does on the racetrack tomorrow to see if and again, asking the connections if this is something that is normal for him. But to me, to see a little bit of sweat in the kidney area and a little bit of lather on the neck, James, and I know both of us love this horse, does that concern you at all?
Well, I mean, it's you know, he had to travel over from Ireland, so I agree with Brandon. I mean, it's his first time really. They walked him in quarantine behind gates, I'm sure extensively, just to keep, you know, that exercise, you know, maintain the level of fitness. But it's his first time. These other horses have all experienced these crowds in days past, and yeah, I'm not going to get too upset about this right now, Joe. He looks happy. He looks like he's on his toes, and I think he's making a good appearance. He's a nice-looking horse for sure.
All right, there's some questions about Mendelssohn and social media while we have him on the screen because he's basically having his own show right now. How did Mendelssohn get his name? Well, this is a guess. I don't know this for sure, but Felix Mendelssohn was a German composer, pianist, and conductor back in the 1800s, and it would just make sense that Mendelssohn would be named for Felix Mendelssohn. And other questions coming in, and by the way, that was actually by several people in social media and also from Dawn at the Downs asking about Mendelssohn's name. Tracy's asking, do you think the European style of training racehorses will be an advantage for Mendelssohn? We'll throw this one to you, James.
Yeah, to me, the thing with Aidan O'Brien is he cross-entered him to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and on dirt and the Juvenile turf, and they opted to stay on turf. But he knew they have training grounds where they have dirt tracks, synthetic tracks, turf courses, and I guarantee you they trained him on the dirt over there. They knew what they had. I think Aidan O'Brien's been pointing towards his step ever since last fall, so it's all been a process, and you know these are the last stages, just getting him here and getting him in the starting gate.
Lots of questions about Mendelssohn before he even arrived here, and even more in social media now, so thanks everybody for sending those along. James, I want to stick with you here. We've got lots of questions asking if Mendelssohn wins the Kentucky Derby, will he try for the Triple Crown? I've heard that there's a chance that if he does win the Derby, he might not run back in 2 weeks in the Preakness. That's not Aidan O'Brien's style. You got to win the Derby first, but your thoughts?
I think he'll definitely run back in the Preakness. And we say that's not his style. It is his style in the fall, Joe. He'll run his horses. He's had horses that have come over, and they've run running the Champion Stakes like 2 weeks before it, and they come over and run in the Breeders' Cup. So he gets his horses in good form. He's not opposed to running them like right back if they're doing well. And, if he wins the Kentucky Derby, there's no reason not to go after the Triple Crown with him at Baltimore in the second leg.
Yeah, great point. Scott, you're a stats guy. We all are to some certain extent, but you and I also are very creative handicappers. Look at races, look at trips. Aidan O'Brien's record on dirt. He's 1 for 49 in Grade 1 stakes races on dirt. I personally don't pay attention to that at all. I think this is a different animal, a different race, different circumstances. But is it something you pay attention to?
Not in this case, Joe, when it comes to Aidan O'Brien. You have to remember a lot of those races, I can't speak for all 49, but a lot of those races, they send sometimes their B and C string over. This is their A horse. Rarely do we get those. Even sometimes they bypass the Breeders' Cup turf for races like the Arc and such. So to me, that stat is not as meaningful as some other stats we'll look at.
And James, a lot of times too, they send horses over for the Breeders' Cup Classic that are turf horses, maybe trying to raise that stud value a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. They've accomplished what they set up to do in Europe, and they're taking a chance in the biggest race. I mean, they view the Breeders' Cup Classic as the main event, and if they have a quality horse, often they'll run that race on the dirt, whether he likes dirt or not. I mean, that's the difference, I think, in a lot of his dirt horses dirt starts he's had. He's brought turf horses over that are bred on both sides of their pedigree for the turf, and they're trying dirt. Mendelssohn is bred more for the main track. He's bred to excel on dirt, and he just happened to be versatile enough to be a good turf horse. So, yeah, the breeding part of it's no concern for me.
All right, so there's Mendelssohn on the track. We're approaching 8 o'clock, and I promised everybody we would do this. So as we continue to watch Mendelssohn, I'm going to go to Scott, and then I'm going to go to James and Brandon. Everyone's asking us for our picks, so I'll release mine first. I'm going to go with Mendelssohn as my top pick. If you can see the button I'm wearing, you probably got a clue as to that. Vino Rosso is going to be my long shot play. I'm expecting 12 or 15 to 1 odds on him. So Mendelssohn, my top pick. Vino Rosso, my best long shot. Scott, we'll go to you next. Your top pick in the Kentucky Derby, your best long shot.
Yeah, after a lot of deliberation, Joe, I landed on Audible. I like his versatility, as I mentioned. I like that he can come from out of it. I expect him to make a big move on the far turn. And then in terms of a long shot, let's go with Noble Indy. I like the way he's coming into the race. I like how he fought in the Louisiana Derby under adverse conditions. A lot of these horses have had perfect trips. 30 to 1. I'm not afraid to jump in on that.
James, last year you and I were on the same horse, Always Dreaming. We were comparing how much money we made after the Kentucky Derby. I hope that's the case again this year because we're on the same horse.
We are, Joe. I'm on Mendelssohn as my top pick. I think he'll become the first European-trained Kentucky Derby winner on Saturday. My long shot selection is Flame Away. And I'll tell you, I've really liked what I've seen. He's got good tactical speed. He does have to break from post 4, but he's a horse that has just gone around this track and around and looks like he's just thriving presently to me. So if he can work out the right trip, I think he could be in position to at least hold for a minor award, perhaps, challenge for it all if he can take another step forward.
Brandon, you've looked at the past performances. You've watched the replays of the preps. You've got to see these horses train in person, which is your specialty. Give me your top pick and your best long shot.
Yeah, the top pick in here is going to be Hofburg, and I just love the way that he's trained over his time here at Churchill Downs, and he's touting himself to us, guys, and that's something that I look for. He looks great in the flesh. He just looks like he's really enjoying himself out there. He's got a little spring in his step. One thing that's not been talked about either, if you go back and watch the Florida Derby, Hofburg and Audible were moving at the same time on the outside. Watch the head-on replay. Hofburg's hole closed up on him, mainly because of Audible and the horse to the inside. So there was a slight little grab by the rider then there. He had to wait. Audible got to make his run. Hofburg followed him. It still held on well for second. Hofburg, for me, I don't think we're going to get to 20 to 1, but I'm hoping for 15 to 1. My long shot in here is going to be Lone Sailor, and he's a horse that in 3rd and 4th, I'm going to just key him because he's got that late running style to pick up the pieces. This is his home track. He's always trained well, and I think Tom Amos learned a lot from his first experience here in the Derby with Mo Tom. He's bringing this horse up to the race the best that he can, and he looks great at her.
Brandon, we're going to stick with you, and thanks for providing a little bit of long shot infusion into our Derby picks there. Mendelssohn now doing a little bit more on the track.
Yeah, and you can see, they really want to get something into him here, and all of his stats stablemates. They haven't done a lot since they've got here. They've been in quarantine, so they want to get out here and stretch the legs a little more and really, like we talk about, open those lungs up a little bit and let him know, get a feel for the track too, guys. It's important too. A little bit of a different surface, even though it was dirt in UAE. All dirts are a little bit different, guys. So get a feel for the track in here. You can see him kind of attacking the ground a little bit. The ears have been up the whole time. Even though he has gotten a little bit hot, I haven't seen him, his mannerisms have been really good. He seems like a happy horse out there and doing his job. You can see the ears up again there. He picks his head up every now and then. He just seems like he even though he was a little bit wet, he seems like he's enjoying what he's doing.
James, we got a question from KW from New Jersey. KW from New Jersey wants to know about quarantine. What is quarantine? Why do horses go into quarantine? And what are the rules of quarantine?
Well, they're shipping from overseas, so there's livestock rules in place for that. You know, when horses travel from country to country. So when they shipped to America when he shipped to America from Ireland, he had to go into a quarantine barn and area where they put a fence around it, no contact with any horses other than the ones he came with for 48 hours. So basically 48 hours. Then after 48 hours, they're free to come and gallop and train and then race.
All right, very good. We continue to see Mendelssohn train. And, Scott, we've been waiting for this horse, for weeks as horses trickled in here to Churchill Downs, and the California horses arriving earlier in the week with Mendelssohn. As James mentioned, he was in quarantine. And now Mendelssohn kind of just has his own show going on, so I guess it was worth the wait.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We waited for him. We didn't get to just see him for a glimpse or a moment or two. We've gotten to really take a good look at him. Looks to me like some of that lather's coming off his neck, which is probably a positive sign. Brandon could probably speak to that better. But
yeah, let's talk about that, Brandon. So, he first came out on the racetrack. He hasn't seen a racetrack in several days. Obviously shipping over here and then being in quarantine. Maybe he was just a little bit eager and, a little bit worked up, wanting to do a little bit more and wasn't allowed to do so at that point. But at least to me, he looks a lot better right now.
Yeah, think about when, we haven't been outside in a few days and it gets a little warmer than what we're used to outside. Of course, we're going to sweat a little bit. Kind of the same thing here, and he's on his wrong lead, but don't look too much into that. A lot of the times in Europe, they're on their wrong leads for a little bit. His hind end looks good. He's very fit. And, I like what I'm seeing out here. And we talked about this earlier in the first couple shows. Don't let one appearance on the track throw you off a horse completely, guys. It's happened before to me personally. Don't let this appearance, if you like Mendelssohn, throw you off.
Yeah, and I talked about this a couple days ago when I saw Frosted come here a few years ago. The first day he was on the track, he was a mess. And I'm like, man, what's up with Frosted? And literally the next day, it was like a 180-degree turn, Scott, where it's like, wow, all of a sudden Frosted looks amazing. So to speak to what Brandon just said, I want to see Mendelssohn tomorrow because he'll be on the track again one day in advance of the Kentucky Derby. But all signs towards the end of this exercise session are positive.
Yeah, I was concerned, a little bit more amateur of an opinion of looking at him when he came out and got lathered up. But he looks great to me. Almost a picturesque horse to me. Not a lot to take away from this from me. But like you said, Joe, important to compare what you see from horses. Some of them get lathered up every time. Some of them don't. But when they do it and it's not normal, then maybe it's a concern.
Brandon, a question for you on body types coming in from Kay at Dawn at the Downs. You see Magnum Mooney's a big strapping type. You see Justify is a big strapping type. To Kay, Mendelssohn looks a lot more athletic, like a horse that might be able to handle 1.25 miles a little bit better than some of those bigger, bulkier horses. Explain what you're looking for in body types when it comes to what a horse might do best.
Yeah, it's all about the individual in here, guys. And I noticed this, too, when Mendelssohn came out. He's not a big, heavy horse. And then you also have to think about the training tactics, too. Over here, we're training our horses on dirt. We train for speed. Over there, a lot of the racing, the training is based around turf races. So we're talking about long gallops. Most of these runners that come over from Europe, from overseas, are going to be more of a longer, leaner look to them. But don't get me wrong. They're fit. They're quick. And it's all about an individualist idea with body type. Some horses are just bigger bodies. They have bigger bones, thicker bones. And Mendelssohn looks great out here, guys. He's just a bit of a longer, lankier type, but very fit. And you can tell he's very quick.
All right, thanks to Brandon and James. High atop Churchill Downs, dawn at the Downs. I hope everyone is enjoying their breakfast here this morning. We do race today. It's Thursday. First post will be at 12:45. I want to get final thoughts from everyone on the panel here. Ed DeRosa has been with us the majority of the time. Scott, you've done a great job filling in for Ed when he hasn't been here, and we thank you for that. Your thoughts? I mean, obviously, you know, we're looking at these horses on paper. We're watching replays. You're a big replay watcher like I am. We're looking at the past performances. We finally get the draw. We get to watch him train. I say this all the time. This is the only race that we handicap for 5 months. And now it's all over with. Our public selections have been done. Your thoughts on what you've seen since you've been here at Churchill?
Yeah, it's been a great first experience here at Churchill for me, Joe, coming in from California. Really happy to be able to fill it in for Ed. In terms of seeing the horses in the flesh, a huge advantage, I think, just to get a feel for how they're acting. But I've really enjoyed it. Definitely have taken notes on each of the horses, different than I would normal handicapping, but it's been a great time.
All of us that do this job are very passionate about what we do, but I don't think anyone eclipses James Scully in that department from a historical perspective, from a handicapping perspective. James, you've done a great job on the Kentucky Derby Work Show, and I know you're excited about what's to come in the next couple of days, buddy.
I am, Joe. It's the best group of horses I've said that coming into the race that I've seen. I'm 7 deep with win contenders. I mean, usually we just don't have that kind of depth. And to add to that, there's so much quality. I mean, some real superstar potential in this year's field. So it's the best Derby I can ever remember coming into the race. I think it could be one of the best runnings I've ever seen, Brandon.
Yeah, and for me, it's one of those things where everybody gets to see what I do on a daily basis and what I look at. And sometimes there are things that aren't in the past performances in your program that we can see in the mornings out here. So it was nice to be able to show everybody that perspective. But yeah, like you talked about, such a deep field and so many stars in here. I mean, this is one of the best derbies that we've had over the past decade in here, and so many stars. We saw Mendelssohn, Justify, all the Pletchers. I mean, all the big guns are here, guys, and just so excited to get there.
We've had Gary Young on the show. He is a clocker, handicapper, bloodstock agent. And it's been great having Brandon on the show the vast majority of the mornings. His insight into what he sees out there, how he describes it, giving us Hofburg and Lone Sailor based on past performances, but also based on how they've been training. Excellent insight from Brandon Staubel as well. I want to give credit to our television department, man. These guys have been here early in the morning, setting up the set, getting the show together with the graphics and the B-rolls and the rundowns, particularly Keith Wetzler and Richie Hayes and everybody involved with the show. Christina McManigal helping us book the guests as well. So great job, everybody. We're very, very happy we're able to bring this show to you, and we're looking forward to the real show. Coming up on Friday, the Longines Kentucky Oaks and the 144th running of the Kentucky Derby presented by Woodford Reserve. It's a little bit windy here under the Twin Spires today. Main track is fast. We got to see some great training this morning, highlighted by the first appearance of the European superstar Mendelssohn. How good is he? We'll find out how good he is. Justify, Magna Moon, and the rest coming up on Saturday. Enjoy your Kentucky Derby experience, everybody. Take care.